Hello and welcome to Chess Please. Are you looking for a fun, aggressive, and theoretically sound opening to play as white against the Sicilian? Me too. Let's learn the Smith-Morra together. Let's jump on in. So, as with many gambits, the purpose of the Smith-Morra Gambit is to exchange one of your pawns for time and development advantages. In this case, we're going to lose our C pawn, and we're going to gain a lovely home for pretty much every single one of our pieces, as well as a developmental advantage. Now, with any gambit, time is absolutely of the essence, so it's very important to keep the pressure on, keep the initiative, and start creating threats or building up to threats with almost every single move. Let's have a look at how we do that. So the basis of the Smith-Morra Gambit is a e4 opening, very nice. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, it is against the Sicilian, so c5 by black. And I'm a Sicilian player and I hate playing against the Smith-Morra Gambit, which is kind of why I chose to have a look into it. And it turns out it's a really fun opening to play. So rather than any getting your knights out of nonsense like that, the Smith-Morra Gambit comes with d4, immediately staking a claim in the centre. And actually, at this stage, black doesn't really have a lot of great options to reject this offer. They kind of have to take, because, you know, if they come out like this with their pawn, you can take, and if they take back, you can take with the queen, and the king will lose their right to castle. Any other way of kind of holding on here, we can start to like push in here and just gain a huge space advantage in the middle. So they are very likely to take, which is great news. That's what we want them to do. Now the gambit piece of this, I mean, theoretically we could take back with the queen here. You don't want to do that because knights just come out here, and you're just going to help them develop their piece with tempo. You'll have to drop your queen back. So what you do, the gambit-y part, is this. You play c3, offering up another gambit. Again, they kind of don't really have a huge like scope not to take. You know, if they do this, they spend time. You can actually just take back. And if they take back here, you can start to develop as normal, and you've got a lot of time to pick up this pawn right back, and again, you're ahead in development. So very likely they will take this second pawn and take that material advantage. What you want to do, of course, is take back with your knight, and here we've established the Smith-Morra Gambit. It's been played and accepted. What you want to see from black is something like f6 here. Already a mistake. They've just sleepwalked into this, which basically means we've gained an absolute beast of a pawn in the middle here. And this knight, much like many of these openings when you get an advanced e-pawn, this f-knight has nowhere to go. Here is taken, here is taken, here is taken. So they have to go away home. And now you're ended up with an enormous time advantage for the cost of one little baby pawn. So definitely compensation in that particular case. What they will likely play instead of that is knight c6. That's kind of the main line, and already we can start to see where some good homes for our pieces are, i.e. the c file and the d file are already wide open from our side of things. So you got to be thinking, let's get our rooks there if we can. Now, not right now, obviously there's a ton of work to do before that, but just think in the back of your mind, that's where my rooks kind of want to live. What you want to do pretty much after anything that black does here, so they'll probably either play c6, they might also play something like d6, or even potentially e6, basically just trying to chomp down on or like cut off some of the weaknesses like that f7 pawn, and get some avenues for them to develop, because again, they're up a pawn. If they can stabilize, if they can get developed, if they can get their pieces into the game, then that extra pawn will absolutely be an advantage for them. So we have to make sure that doesn't happen. But pretty much whatever they do that isn't knight f6, which we push, if they bring out their knight, push here, they're not very likely to push here because obviously you'll just take. And if they push here, then you've got an absolutely gorgeous square for your bishop here on c4, bearing down on this very weak f7 pawn. So they'll either go here, here, or here. Quite likely they might do something else, in which case do what we mentioned. But your next move almost always is going to be knight to f3. Well, actually, let's even play one of these moves. Knight to f3, and already you're starting to get your pieces out. Now again, they still can't develop like this naturally. They'll probably do something like knight c6, and This is the kind of most counterintuitive bit for me, but once you start to think about like what the point of this opening is, it makes a lot more sense. So a very common and powerful move here is actually bishop to c4. What this does is it actually chomps down on this long diagonal, which is lovely. But what you'll notice is this d5 square, a critical central square in your opponent's territory. Many games will hinge on how that d5 square shakes down. You have amassed an amazing amount of control on this square early on. It's pretty much yours for the rest of the game. So black can never use that for their development because you'll just gobble that up and you'll be up material. So even though this bishop is, as they say, biting on granite, to quote Daniel Naroditsky, it's still very well positioned, and it kind of locks this pawn in place for fear of creating a weakness here on f7. Again, they might do something passive like this, or there's not a lot of great squares for any of their pieces to go, which is nice. You might see something like bishop in here, and what you actually just want to just castle away. Just castle yourself in here, and again you've got 3 pieces in play. They've got 2. They've got an extra pawn. You're pretty okay. You've got a nice little attack building on their king side here. Potential for bringing your pieces out here. What some of your next maneuvers might be king here. Oh, let's see what they're going to do here. Maybe they'll start to get some of their own pieces out. Maybe even more likely something like knight e7 there. And what you want to do is maybe something like queen e2 is here. Get your queen into the game, supports this bishop if need be. She doesn't need to be involved in that d5 marshalling. It's completely marshaled. And after that, you're looking to get your rook actually on d and c. As I mentioned earlier, 2 open files. Rook on d, you'll be staring down the queen. The rook on c once you get your bishop to somewhere like here. And at that point, you will have every single one of your pieces in play. They'll just about have castled. This bishop's pretty ineffectual for the longest time. This rook's very ineffectual. So despite being down a pawn, the resources at your disposal in the actual game, much stronger. So just to recap on the initial theory, it's going to be e4, c5, straight away d4. And it also takes Sicilian players out of their opening prep, which is lovely. They'll take here, or otherwise you can either just push, or if they defend like that, you just take, offer up the pawn on c3. They take, you take back with your knight, something like this. And then if they play the knight first, if they don't move this pawn up first, get the bishop in here, make them play that, because they definitely don't want you staring at that pawn. So they'll play something like this, something like this. Otherwise, just play knight to f3 earlier if they do play this move. But even still, your bishop's happy there, your knight's happy there, your knight's happy there. This bishop could be happy here or here. Even can go for a little foray into enemy territory, provoke a weakness here or here, and then come on back here. Queen here, castles, rook to d, rook to c. And then you've got your whole army at your disposal. Makes for very fun attacking games. You'll see here on the left hand side of things, the computer loves material and they're up a pawn. They don't really see that black has to be unbelievably precise to make this perceived mild advantage a reality. And the level that you and I play at, having more pieces in the game is much bigger an advantage than this one insignificant pawn which is no longer here. So, having a quick look at a game I played this very day. Let's load that up. Okay, so this is a game I played earlier today against Gusty Gum, who was about 60 points higher rated than me. They were about 1740 and we were in the 1680s at the time. We're in and around the 1700s, sometimes over, sometimes under. But just as it goes to show, even against stronger players, the Smith-Morra Gambit is a very dangerous weapon. So we open it up, as we showed it up in the video. Smith-Morra Gambit, they accept it. We bring our knight out, they bring their knight out. And even again, as I said in the video, we could also have done this, but this is also a book move. They do this move, which we mentioned, just cutting off this bishop. And even with that, you still want to land your bishop in there. We castle again. We saw this. Don't need to react to that immediately, and couldn't because our king would have been pinned. They take there, which I'm happy with. I'm happy to just clean all that mess up. They've taken 2 tempo to develop their bishop and give it away again. They're up a pawn, but it only exacerbates our developmental lead. So now I noticed that this pawn was very, very weak. So we have the queen staring right at it, and now we have the bishop staring right at it. They've got the queen defending it. It can't advance because of what we mentioned earlier, the absolute stranglehold we have here on d5. So this pawn, central pawn, becomes a huge weakness for them, and very good player like this, best they could come up with, and I think the best the computer could come up with, was king there. Just give away your right to castle just to keep this central pawn. Actually, I tell a lie, I think the computer's best move, they were just like, yeah, it's gone, forget about that pawn, bring your knight out there. However, they played their king out here, and at this stage I start to play pretty sloppily. This is no longer book moves or the best move, so you'll see some mistakes in here, but that's okay. Queen out here, again, in retrospect, maybe this might have been better. My thinking at the time was this had a nice little open window, which we'll see is actually a mistake. This plan didn't work. I wanted to do like here, attacking the king, and also this pawn, maybe pick up a knight, or sorry, a rook in the process. It doesn't work for kind of a fun reason. Same idea, I want to pin this knight in here, attack in here. I was expecting something like this. My opponent found a pretty fun move, which is this, which is basically offering up a trade of queens here, and if I don't take that trade of queens, I'll just take this bishop, which is undefended. Computer had a very disgusting move here, where it was just give away your bishop, king takes in here, and then you pick up one of these pieces, and the king is an absolute no man's land. I didn't spot that at the time. I've no shame in pointing out, but let's see where we were going from here. Yeah, what we actually did was just, I couldn't think about that, I just wanted to save my bishop, so I just took the queen, and I felt maybe not the best thing to do to give away the queen even though we're down a pawn, but I felt like we had two lovely bishops, a king who was never getting castled, a little bit more passive than I might have liked here, dropping the bishop back, but I had designs on this. And what I loved about this position and this bishop here, which kind of looks a little goofy, but with the king in the middle, this pawn is actually pinned. And my second mistake of the game, I actually missed that I can just take that there. I brought my rook into the game to pile more pressure on this pawn, and gave them a get out of jail free card. They might have been able to like push here, or some other way of protecting this pawn, maybe moving the king to break this pin. They didn't, which was great, and then I spotted this. So this is a player that is much better than me, and we've actually just recouped the lost pawn that we gave up at the start, and we have pretty much all our pieces in the game, just this fella to get involved. Whereas this bishop is crap, these rooks are dreadful, king's exposed, this bishop is an absolute beast here, so very well worth it for the cost of a pawn, I would say. Bring a pawn out here, too slow, we just dropped the knight back. He's done his job there. Didn't actually see any great places for him to live, like, you know, here is not great, and anywhere else is kind of not great, so just dropped him back. Knight comes in here, really wanted to take advantage of this pin, which we did, basically forcing this knight to move. He does so, and now we can just blow the game open. That's check. This knight's going to have to come in, but we have all this sort of stuff happening. Rook in there, king's in all sorts of trouble, and we just start to put the squeeze on. The king never gets out of the center because of the early pressure on their own center, on that d5 and d6 square actually. I traded off bishops here. I think there was something, I think actually here, rather than knight up here, I think I was able to do bishop here, and just offer a more kind of potent trade. This knight of course can't take because of the bishop. That's kind of what went down. We ended up trading pieces again, and at this stage, counting the material, we have equal minors, equal rooks, and we got 4 or 5 pawns against 5 pawns. Equal material, but looking at this, I think we can all see why we would prefer to be in white's position than black's. 2 lovely bishops, 2 gorgeous rooks. Yeah, that's how they move. Versus 2 pretty manky knights and a butt naked king. And the rest of this, nothing too fancy Dan. Actually, sorry, we win a knight here, which we might have been able to do. Oh yeah, we get the bishop out of the pin, or sorry, we discover this attack on the knight, and at the same time threaten this knight here. Can't defend both pieces at once, so we pick up a knight. King moves over here. Bishop drops back with this idea in mind. We execute on that. No, we don't. We just put pressure on here. My idea, pretty clumsy here, just tuck the rook in here. And that's how it happens, that's how it shakes down. And at this stage, I'm thinking I'm way up in material. My position is so much better. If I can start to trade down, that's fine by me. And initially, here's a nice little tactic. I didn't need to defend this bishop because this is actually check. So either the king just moves and then we just take that rook, or what actually happens is they take this rook, we take that rook back and defend the bishop at the same time. Again, just to draw attention, this player was much higher rated than me, so I'm very nervous at this stage, so there might have been a few more blunders. But basically my whole mantra here was don't blunder one of your rooks. That's the only thing that's going to let them back in the game. So we played super safe, create a bit of luft, bit of air for the king to breathe, throw a little check in there. And my goal here, again, still just kind of trading off pieces. This is kind of a fork, but not really, because this bishop is so well defended. Just get the rook out of there, put extra pressure on here, basically makes black take the bishop. And now here, there's just nothing. They're completely toothless. Like anything black's going to do, like pushing these, that's just going to be a trade down, and we're going to be left with an extra rook. You're never going to get at my king with this rook. Might have been a grindy little finish, and to be honest, with 1 minute 45 I could definitely have made a mess of that, but thankfully they resigned here, and it was just a nice win, and it was a nice high level win with the Smith-Morra Gambit. I've been playing it in Blitz and Bullet, which I'm way lower rated at, and having a good time with that too. But that's in principle the ideas of the Smith-Morra Gambit. Give away your c-pawn in exchange for lovely homes for the rest of your pieces and an immense amount of pressure on the centre and the king side. Feel free to try it out. My next steps, I would recommend try it out in a few Bullet or Blitz games, or let's call it here a rating you don't care about. Whether you play mainly on Lichess or chess.com, play this on the other one. Do a few analyses, see how you get on, and then start working it into your whatever main account repertoire is. Would be my recommendation. That's all from me tonight, folks. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly do, and I'm really enjoying playing this opening. I think you will too. All the very best. If you did have a good time, please feel free to like and subscribe. Drop us a comment, any other openings that you like to play or you think you'd like covered here. Happy to put a video together. All the best, and have a great day.